King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Last April, I talked about a watershed moment because of the sins and the negligence that come back to bite WWE, and it would affect all professional wrestling forever. And companies like AEW will benefit greatly from this. So what's happened in the last week or so has been whirlwind. There is so much news to talk about tonight. Just to try to get everything put together, we're going to try our best right here on the program to lay it all out. So we know there was changes to the broadcast crew. We know there were issues where the board of directors have been announced, where Nick Khan, the president of WWE right now, has been inserted into the board of directors. He is now part of the board. A lot of push. He's responsible for Pat McAfee and Jimmy Smith being now on commentary. A number of issues that happened when we saw the WWE studios and the digital division being consolidated, with a number of jobs being let go. Well, in the same vein of last week where we saw the corporate carnage, we're now seeing again the same thing with the talent. And a number of superstars have been let go. You have already heard this. We're just going to go through, for context's sake, for those that are going to be coming back to this episode and learning all about this. WWE, as of today, June 2nd, 2021, they have come to terms on the releases of Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, Lana, Murphy, Ruby Riott, and Santana Garrett. Future endeavored. And this happened. There are others that are being rumored to also be let go. That includes Keith Lee, Liv Morgan, Humberto Carrillo, but they have not been released. There have been no other releases so far. What we know for sure are these. That's it. There has been a lot of talk today all through the internet about what's going on here. A lot of wrestling fans are confused. They're bewildered. They don't understand what's happening. They're nervous. They're perturbed. They don't know why this is happening. And it's not just a normal release. We've had releases already earlier this year. When you hear names like they put out there, Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, Lana, Ruby Riott, definitely those four have been prominent on television for a long time, Raw or SmackDown. Santana Garrett brought into NXT, I believe, several times, and she's gone again. And Murphy was brought in to try to kind of help build up to a storyline with Seth Rollins and the Mysterios. All this here, and remember, Murphy goes back to the Super Showdown in Australia and the build he got off of that. And where we are now, the reasons why this is happening. I got on the TikTok earlier today and I made a few comments. Everybody's talking about the releases, and just the normal fan diatribe you're going to get. Like, you have Eva Marie coming back. Why are you letting these people go? Or you're going to just sign new part-timers back once again. But really what it comes down to is, this is a power move. And I believe this is where the new corporate structure has come into play. Because the way wrestling has been done with WWE in the last few years, it's changing. The corporate culture is now coming in. And I think with Nick Khan, he has earned enough trust and political capital to be able to go ahead and start making some significant moves. It's as if Vince, not necessarily being pushed aside, but I believe that Nick Khan, to his credit, he is becoming not what Michelle Wilson or George Barrios were previously as presidents, where they were kind of just followed along, lapdogs. It's obvious that Nick Khan was brought into this mix to be a disruptor, to shake things up, to really make things happen. And so he can make these changes. If this is something where the company decided to go ahead and make this budget concern here and write off a few names that were under contract, and they were able to do that. If this is something that it's a directive directly or indirectly from Nick Khan, then there's going to be a justification for it. And this is not going to set any, this is not going to make anyone feel happy about it. And that's understood. Now we can go through the names and explain what this means about losing these stars. We could speculate about where they're going to be going next. It is fascinating. But this comes back to my original point that I've talked about for years. WWE does not have to be the end-all, be-all. We can always see these stars flourish somewhere else. These 6 names, I have no doubt in my mind that they will find themselves in another promotion. I said that on Twitter today. I totally believe that. And I believe they're going to find their way somewhere else. And some of these stars, they are now automatically really attractive free agents. There are going to be promotions that are going to be bidding for these stars. Now, Braun Strowman doesn't have to stay in wrestling, but ultimately he could because he's such a formidable force here. Why not? Now, the other thing I said on TikTok today, because I did a couple of videos when I saw the commentary on wrestling TikTok, and I just had to go and just respond to some of it. A couple of things I pointed out and I said was what I just said about Nick Khan and what they're trying to do. The second thing I also said was, when the company has failed based on the material they gave these stars to work with, whether they realize they made a mistake or not, it still comes down to the fact that if you see what's going on here, the understanding, the corporate understanding will be these are assets. And these assets need to be able to perform. If we're putting them under contract, they need to be able to do what we want to do. Now, that doesn't mean it's right. It's as if you're having an actor or an actress being given a script to read. They need to play a part in a movie or a TV show. The showrunners are going to go and produce the show, and they're going to say, well, this actor doesn't work for this part, so we need somebody else. We're firing this person. We're bringing in somebody else. Or we're just going to cut the part out. That's what's happening here. The understanding is that WWE wants to have people that are going to be able to make something out of the material they're given. Now, that's not taking into account that the material can be shit, because it is. Just look at the ratings we had last night, or excuse me, Monday night, because the ratings went bad again. Now, it was Memorial Day weekend, so you can put that in front of you, but it still doesn't take away the fact that the audience, lowest audience in show history, 1.621 million viewers, down 12% from last week. So start out the night with 1.5 million viewers. Final hour, 1.168. Bad. Horrible. But that's a bigger problem. And it is a momentum switch where we already know that since WrestleMania, the hype of a lot of stars are gone. Not to mention, some of the stars that were on here, well, I can say that at least 2 of the stars were given spotlights. Well, one actually had a push going on. Braun Strowman coming out of the Shane McMahon match, I believe he had momentum. And he was inserted into the title match at WrestleMania Backlash, the triple threat, of which he performed well. What confuses everybody is the fact that Braun Strowman, yeah, he's not great in the ring. He's gotten better in the ring. He's had better matches. Putting him in front of a script is a challenge because we don't need to hear him talk with a script. We don't need to put words in his mouth. But that goes for script writing across the board. Aleister Black, if you could make a mistake with him, WWE did. How do you fuck up Tommy End? How do you fuck up on a character like that? So unique, so original. And NXT
and what was done from in NXT was so good. That character was white hot coming out of NXT. And they take him to the main roster, bring him up alongside Ricochet, ruined him. Now, even the fact that we're going to go and do the Darkfather thing, which could have gone somewhere, another evolution of his character, for whatever reason, Aleister Black, I don't think we needed anything of what they did with him in terms of the I want to pick a fight. All of that shit was unnecessary. When you hear Tommy End himself and you see what he's done in his career, this is where WWE needed to go and do something. They needed to go ahead and create something proprietary that was their character, that was something of their creation. This is the detriment they continue to put themselves in. They can't live with the fact they get a character that is already ready-made, ready-built from the NXT locker room to bring him in and to get him onto the main roster. How do you make a mistake with him? Such a unique character. Very good wrestler. Great work in NXT. It's too bad he couldn't have stayed there. But then we know there are some stars in NXT that don't want to go up to the main roster, or would rather stay down on the main roster. I mean, the environment right now, do we want Finn Balor and Tommaso Ciampa to make their way up? Adam Cole, I don't see. There's a reason. There has to be a reason some stars in NXT have been there for so long. They've overstayed their welcome, because we all know they would, in the right environment, they were already ultimately overdue by far to be on the main roster, but they're not. Anybody from the Undisputed Era, Tommaso Ciampa, eventually Karrion Kross, all of them should all be up there. But look what's going to happen if you do. All homegrown built. They went to the system, got to the Performance Center, made their way up. All of them did what they were told. As far as I know, the only person that might have had a little bit of bad press was Lana because of the wedding to Rusev, or now Miro. And that's it. But here's where we can look at things now. Braun Strowman can do whatever he wants. If he wants to go ahead and continue wrestling, that's one of the first people that AEW could definitely look at. But I think all the wrestling promotions, all of them, including Japan, they're all going to look at him. This big mastodon of a guy, they're going to look at him and do something with him. And I guarantee you, Braun Strowman will do a better job anywhere else. It's not that hard to do something with this guy. Any traditional wrestling company, put this guy back in NWA, they could have done something with him. Give him to Jerry Jarrett. Give him to Vern Gagne. Give him to really, Dusty Rhodes, the bookers of the day. Give him to Bill Watts. They would have done something with this guy. Fritz von Erich would have done something with this guy. The guy cut from the cloth. You don't have big guys like this, that mobile, that agile, that much of a beast, because he couldn't talk that well, and because of what they had to do with him. I mean, you rebuilt this character several times. It's just really, it's speechless. You can't. There's no way to explain this. Why they screw up. But the reason why they made the change that they did, I understand it. I get why. Because in the mindset of that corporate office in Stamford, Connecticut, they're going to say, we gave him good material and he didn't live up to it. And we're paying him a lot of money. So he's out. So they unloaded a contract. Aleister Black, anywhere. He can stamp his ticket to any promotion. And I'm telling you, people are going to be clamoring for Aleister Black. Wherever he wants. And he doesn't have to go to, he can command a contract. He can command some great independent dates. That guy, wherever you want. I could absolutely see AEW wanting to go after, because the AEW doesn't have to pick up all these people. but they could definitely select some people that are just, you don't have to do anything with them. You take Tommy Yen, bring him into AEW. It's done. Audience will follow him there. We know that. Ring of Honor. With Ring of Honor, if you got some money, you need to start signing some of this talent. I'm just saying, Aleister Black, that's somebody that you put, and that's a main event star on Ring of Honor right now. MLW would clamor. I know Court Bauer would pick up Aleister Black. No question there. Now, Murphy, well, because there's a lot of guys of the same build and size of Murphy. He's good, but he's going to be a mid-carder if he goes somewhere else. It's not where he's going to just ultimately go, because he really didn't do right by him anyway. He had, I mean, you could put him into a tag team. He was actually did fine in a tag team. And what they gave him, I thought they didn't do that bad either, but they didn't. He's a great wrestler. He's a very good wrestler. But without the charisma and personality that WWE would have wanted. And I think there's something to be said about some of the stars that got brought in here from NXT that never were going to fit the main event mold. But that doesn't mean they didn't get a chance to get brought on to NXT, to the Performance Center, and just the experience of that was great. Meanwhile, the main roster experience was not. Now, Lana could go ahead and go over with Miro, work over there. I don't know if she does. And as far as I know, I think Lana can do a lot of the things. She can be an influencer, go work through social media. I don't know if she wants to stay in wrestling, she can. She's gotten better. And she had a lot of airtime. So, I mean, you could do something with her. I always loved her as a manager for Rusev. The traditional beginning when she was in the suits and she looked amazing with the hair tightly curled back, she was awesome. That Lana I miss because she was wonderful. We all love that Lana. And the Lana we have now, yeah, I still like her. I think she's got great charisma, great personality. She's fun. She's bubbly. She's likable. And she knows how to be unlikable because the character she played going around Bobby Lashley and screwing Rusev and the whole wedding thing, I thought that was great too. She's got range. For her, she could go into acting and she would do fine. I don't know what kind of role she would get in, but she could be into acting, reality stuff, whatever. There's a whole lot that they could do with her where she doesn't have to stay in wrestling. She could be doing something else. She's a dancer. She's a performer. There's a whole lot of areas where she can branch herself outside of wrestling and stay out or go back in. But I think options are open for her. For Ruby Riott and Santana Garrett, can you find your way into the Impact Knockouts division? Like, both of them would be a good fit there. I don't know about AEW's women's division. Ring of Honor is building up a women's division. You could definitely take those two and definitely build something on that division there. So there's a place to go, which is not a bad thing. And what's really interesting when we see releases like this are the stars and how they react after the fact. Because also, Tommy Yen was completely cordial, graceful, and he took the chin and he took it like a man. And all you have is respect for this man. Now, shortly after the release, on Twitter, he writes, "I'm gathering my thoughts as this was a complete left field for me, as obviously we just started the Dark Father character, but this was it. Thank you so much to WWE Universe for allowing me to create and give you small bits of myself." There's more that he said, because he took some more time to talk later on in the afternoon. And let's go ahead and talk about that. Because Tommy Yen, we're going to just start calling him that now. There's a lot that he said that really made a whole lot of sense. So today, June 2nd, he went on to Thea Trinidad's Twitch channel for an hour-long chat with fans. So his real name is Tom Budgeon. He will once again be going by Tommy Yen professionally. Now, Tommy Yen was entirely positive about this. "I got told it was budget cuts," quote. "Whether that was budget cuts or not doesn't matter. I'm here now. I've had a great time. I've had a phenomenal 4 to 5 years in the WWE. I'm just really thankful for a lot of things that WWE has done for me. The most thankful I am is that I was given a platform and a limited amount. I was able to give you guys parts of myself, of my character. which, by the way, keep that in mind, too. You know, he goes on to his wife's Twitch channel. You know, for Tommy End, to see that his wife being let go after they got married and trying to be together on the roster and being together, well, now they're together now. And they can kind of move along with what they want with their careers and their life together. Now, he went on and talked about the creative process. And he thought how much thought he put into what we saw on screen. The colors on the wall during his room promos correlated to the next person who was supposed to knock on his door, and how he used color and tarot card designs to tailor his entrance jacket to a particular opponent. He was excited about the Dark Father gimmick, which was based on his own upbringing. The glasses he wore, which were his own reading glasses, and the decision to keep the eye effect from his feud with Seth Rollins were done based on his research into how cult leaders often have something unique about their appearance. He did not have anything bad to say about creative. He says, quote, "The one thing I also want to say is, don't get mad at our creative. Our creative, well, though I'm no longer there, their creative tries their absolute hardest. And they are good people working there. Very creative, talented people. Which probably get a lot of ideas shut down on a regular basis, whether it is Bruce Pritchard or Kevin Dunn or whoever else that's working back there that are hindering or precluding the opportunity of some good ideas to come to light. And maybe some of those ideas might be far-fetched, or some of those ideas might not really fit in the lexicon of professional wrestling or sports entertainment for that matter." And describes how influential and helpful Triple H was throughout his career. Fellow wrestlers like Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, who fights tooth and nail for his vision. He also mentioned Brody Lee, Roman Reigns, honest to God, one of the fucking best locker room leaders I've ever had in my life. The Usos and Apollo Crews all get shout-outs as positive forces behind the scenes during his time there. He calls the WWE a crazy, crazy landscape, but doesn't really get into why. He's just grateful for the restraints it put on him. And then something he had in common with the Revival, who thought being forced into the system forced him to be creative. Quote, "If there's no cuffs and you can do anything, that's one thing. But if you have boundaries and rules and can still shine, that's a testimony of being a professional." Good quote. He talked about a good relationship with the current executive director of Raw and SmackDown, Bruce Pritchard, who, quote, "tried to protect me a lot of situations." And also talked about Paul Heyman fighting tooth and nail for me, but at the end of the day, when a decision is made, a decision is made. And talking about Vince, quote, "All my conversations I've ever had with Vince, he was always very positive. I have a good relationship with Vince. I always told him how I felt. He always respected that about me. He always praised me on my creativity and my ability to have manners and respect, but still being honest with him about how I felt. You never really truly know about how things ended the way they did, but all I can tell you is from my point of view, and the word I always give you is that Vince was always pretty high on me." Wow. And then there were reports that said that McMahon wasn't high on him. And then he talks about the wrestling media, the dirt sheets. And here's what he says, very important. Quote, "Don't listen to these reporters that talk about, oh, Aleister Black this, or Vince never was high on Aleister. That's not true. That's not true at all. Don't listen to them because they don't know anything. They don't have insiders. They have people that tell them warped stories. I think in like the 7 months that I sat home, I think there were 7 different reports that like my NXT request got shot down. That's not true at all. Didn't get shut down at all. It actually got praised. Vince was actually like, that's a really good idea. But his through was like, I want to do it this way first. And if it doesn't work out, I can always put you back in NXT. Because I had a whole plan for that too. But it wasn't shut down hard, not at all. Again, this is the problem. They're not in those talks. They don't know any of these people. Don't waste your money on it. For the most part, it's like 5% truth, and they'll fabricate 95% around it just so you'll click on it. It's just sad to see that this business has become like a tabloid thing, which I always think is so strange. Why are you scamming people? Why are you feeding this negative narrative continuously? I get it, because negativity sells. But you have to be smarter than that, because I can guarantee you from being in that company and seeing some of these articles pop up, 95% are just fabricated. Move along I always like the plans change line. That's sort of the biggest cop-out in the world. As far as I'm concerned, I think it was fair for the most part. Despite those things, there's clearly also some good intent in them, but there's a thing like validating your sources and validating your stories versus like blatantly putting out stuff that harms people. Take the thing a couple of weeks ago with my wife. That harmed her so much. Nothing but hate comments and like awfulness. All because someone was like, sign up to my Patreon and I'll have news, when in reality there was no news. Literally was no news. There was just, it was nothing. Really interesting. Now I'm taking a story from Cage Side Seats that also has to go ahead and kind of defend themselves in their journalistic integrity for that part. And I'll tell you, when you hear the way he talked on the Twitch channel with Thea Trinidad, any company that doesn't want him right now is out of their mind. Any promotion with the wherewithal, the means, and the resources, and the ability to go ahead and sign this guy to a contract should. I mean, they just should. That's all there is to it. Now, besides Aleister Black, there were other people. Obviously, everybody else also responded to what happened out there. Let's go ahead and bring that up because we heard from some of the other superstars. Now, let's go to Braun Strowman and what he said. All he said was on Twitter, what a chapter in life, thank you. That's it. Let's go to the other stars that got released today. Nothing in depth from Lana, Buddy Murphy, or Santana Garrett. Lana wrote on Twitter, I will never forget the fans and the love they showed me, whether it was a tank, power suits, flags, Crush, Rusev, 900 partners, weddings or tables. I always try to entertain you, and you definitely elevated me. Thank you. Buddy Murphy mentions how he ends his 8-year run with the WWE. Talks about he's excited to see what the future holds, what the next adventure holds. And then Santana Garrett, thank you, WWE, peace, love, and a headband power. So when we look at all this happening here, it's unfortunate. And I guess Ruby Riott has not made any comments, or if she has, I have not seen anything yet. Now, there's more to the story. There's speculation as to why this is going on. So let's go ahead and entertain this rumor and what's been said about this to try to validate this possible story. Because along the internet, there was speculation on a possible sale of WWE amidst the releases of today. Let's go through it. So in the story from WrestlingInc.com, Mark Middleton reports on major corporate restructuring that went down in May, led by President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan. Khan was brought on in August 2020. This latest corporate makeup is not the first action that has fueled rumors of a WWE sale to a company like Comcast, Fox, or Disney. Khan appeared on Colin Cowherd's podcast back in April to promote WrestleMania 37, discussed a potential sale. Cowherd pointed to how WWE is a turbulent, around-the-clock lifestyle, and that Vince McMahon is at the point where he doesn't need the money these days. And he then speculated that WWE must have had offers to sell and asked Khan why Vince didn't let go of the company. And Khan said he doesn't believe Vince wants to sell the company mainly because he built it and because he's the best person to run it and because what else would he do? And then Khan also said there was an executive a few years back who asked where Vince was spending his summer. And Vince asked him what was he talking about as he planned to spend his summer in Stamford at the headquarters. And Khan said Vince won't be the guy who's relaxing on a yacht somewhere. Dave Schilling, a former writer, actually talked about he thinks that the company's going for a sale. And Schilling wrote, quote, you don't cut talent assets on this level unless you are trying to maximize profits before a sale. Braun is a legit top guy, a former world champion, and a merchandise mover. Aleister Black was getting a push on TV last week. This is very telling. WrestleNomics' Brandon Thurston wrote a lengthy Twitter piece on why he thinks the sale's not happening. Quote, foreboding that WWE is preparing to preparing to sell is the stuff of cynical fan wrestling fatalism. New leadership came in August. It's still in year one. I would be shocked if Vince sells if WWE is sold in Vince's lifetime. Number one, Nick Khan indicated to Cowherd that Vince has no intention to sell. Number two, I cannot imagine Vince doing anything else. Layoffs, releases, and restructuring probably has more to do with Nick Khan and Christina Solen critiquing and reshaping what George Barrios and Michelle Wilson left behind, which is what I said. Every few years, the WWE has cut employees and talent headcounts. WWE had more than 300 wrestlers under contract in 2020, way more than they need, for basically no other reason than to hoard them from competition, which is what I've also said. Doing so probably contributed to talent leverage and pay negotiations. New leadership might not see this approach as cost-effective. If you follow Vince's career, he's a control freak through and through. That tendency increased with time. I tend to believe control is priceless to him. When he's gone, sure, the company might sell. NBC Universal could be the most obvious suitor and really the only one that makes sense. Then the roster speculation. Thurston went on to say, quote, understandably, wrestlers too may be looking for a grand reason why they or their friends were cut. 78 out of almost 300 of them wrestled on all TV/WWE Network shows in the last full week, including those who were just at ringside. Granted, more appeared in non-wrestling roles. Even allowing for that and a substantial number off-screen of developmental or out with injuries, the ratio doesn't make sense. The defense built to guard against AEW is costly, ineffective, and is being somewhat undone. And because of the fact that we have NXT no longer in the Wednesday Night Wars with AEW anymore, that's gone. And you're not going to stop the momentum of AEW, which I talked about on the post show of Double or Nothing this past Sunday. CM Punk made a lot of comments. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But there's a few others that talked about it. But I don't think there's anything there that makes me feel like we're going to get anything at all of anything like that happening. I don't believe that's going on. Not to me at all, no. There was some other news going on within everything that's going on here with WWE this week. What's happened today, what happened yesterday, is a new hire. WWE taps DAZN's Jamie Horowitz as Executive Vice President, Development and Digital, expanding senior leadership. So development and digital. The digital end, he's now overseeing. So let's learn about Jamie Horowitz a little bit. From Deadline.com, he's a sports media veteran, and he has now been hired effective immediately to oversee much original content, including scripted and unscripted programs for digital and social media. He'll also be responsible for WWE Studios in Los Angeles, whose products include a docuseries with Netflix about Vince McMahon with Chris Smith, Fire, The Greatest Party That Never Happened, directing, and Bill Simmons executive producing. Chris Smith and Bill Simmons executive producing the series. Horowitz will be based in the company's Stamford, Connecticut headquarters with frequent travel to Los Angeles. As it expands its leadership, the Pro Wrestling Powerhouse also named another DAZN executive, Matt Drew, as Senior Vice President of International. Samira Shah was named General Counsel. So here's some background on these people that I'm sure are under the guise of Nick Khan. Horowitz was most recently at DAZN's Executive Vice President of Global Content, overseeing original programming, social content, and editorial strategy. He was part of the service in 2018. Partnered with Sylvester Stallone's Balboa Productions for a number of documentaries under the banner One Night, and helped launch 40 Days, a docuseries produced by LeBron James and Maverick Carter's Uninterrupted, following the tough 8-week training period ahead of a title fight. Also worked at Fox and ESPN, where he helped develop the sports talk show First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, as well as Sports Nation, which are still on today. At WWE International, Drew's mandate is to grow the company's brand and business outside of the U.S., manage global media partners, and work cross-company to develop its international strategy for live events, digital consumer products, and new revenue services. At DAZN, he was Executive Vice President of Rights Acquisition, overseeing rights, portfolio, and partnerships across the Americas, Europe, and Asia, and managing relationships, for all the major sports franchises: NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, La Liga, Bundesliga, and F1, Formula One, among others. This guy has clout. And he's going to help shore up the global efforts going on with WWE. Now, Shah, the general counsel, most recently served as general counsel for online luxury fashion retailer Moda Operandi, and worked as a senior attorney for several major law firms. So Nick Khan is making all these changes. I think it's him. But I still feel like the changes being made are for good. I really do believe. I'm still cautiously optimistic. Because, yes, these releases are pretty severe. Pretty good-sized names that are part of the roster here that were let go. But I know that everybody looks at the bigger picture as to all the people that have been let go so far in WWE this year. So we have to go and talk about that. Now, one of the things that came up with the release is that we have to also mention there's other people as well. We still got to talk about CM Punk's comments. We still got to talk about Tom Phillips, who was also left. But, well, there's more. Hold on. As we talked about, as I said on TikTok, as I said on the show here tonight, that there's a different approach right now where WWE is not just signing people to contract to preclude them from being at another promotion. So the Matt Men podcast and Andrew Zarian mentioned that some of the names released had asked to leave. Also noted that the company was taking a different approach rather than locking people up to prevent them to sign from other promotions. So the names that have dropped today, the releases that were made today, is also in addition to who was released on April 15th: Samoa Joe, Peyton Royce, Billy Kay, Kalisto, Mickie James, Chelsea Green, Tucker Bodals, and others. Which those names are still under a 90-day no-compete clause. Then they can go ahead and sign sign with other promotions. Impact Wrestling is already teasing appearances from some of these stars in their promo package for Slammiversary. Comes up next month. Which by then, I guess it'll be enough time for them to have adhered to the 90-day complete clause, and then they can go ahead and move along. So Impact Wrestling will be aggressive on doing something with this, and they might be considering some other stars to bring on board. And they should. Impact Wrestling will be aggressive about this. AEW, I think, will also consider, but to a lesser extent. Ring of Honor, if they want to get back into the game, they absolutely need to go after some of this talent. They absolutely have to go some of this talent. Samoa Joe, no-brainer. Braun Strowman, no-brainer. Aleister Black, Tommy End, no-brainer. But we also have to understand there's a lot of names within here of the women that are on here. It's a bit of a different story, and it's going to be tougher. I don't know what goes on coming up after that. So there's more people that have talked about this. Let's go and bring up this as well. Let's go and talk about the releases from the mouth of one CM Punk. Let's talk about what he says, because he had a lot to say. Miro and CM Punk talked. Miro took to Twitter to issue a statement. He says, "You can't soar with the Eagles if you're hanging with the turkeys." And you know he's still pretty much bitter from what happened. Now, Punk, he talked about, quote, "It's like a movie with a blockbuster budget and cast. But if it's written by creatively bankrupt nincompoops, specifically for an audience of one, and a language nobody understands anymore, it's trash. But people will watch it because they like movies." Renee Paquette, who formerly of the company, she also made her comments and said, quote, "What a horrible mismanagement of some really talented people. Sucks." There were so many people that actually wrote up about this. Now, what we haven't talked about were some of the changes that happened in the corporate end that is understanding of where we are in the whole corporate structure, which has probably led to all these changes we're seeing right now. One of the things I don't think I had a chance to go and talk about yet, which I need to go into real quick, is I mentioned it earlier, was Nick Khan being elected to the board of directors of WWE. And so we already know, this is from Cultaholic.com, I'm reading the story, the former co-head of Television and Creative Artists Agency, or CAA, reports directly to Vince McMahon, recently headed a huge review of the internal divisions of WWE, which led to mass departures in May, and is now directly responsible for the international departments as well. Khan's stock in WWE has taken another step, joining the board of directors, one of three new names to be elected, along with Steve Koonin and Connor Schell. Steve Koonin actually was part of the end of the WCW days back at Turner Broadcasting. Koonin, the CEO of the NBA's Atlantic Hawks. Schell is the founder and chief CEO of a new unscripted content venture announced with Turner Entertainment. So there's that. Also, Nick Khan, in other news, he decided to go ahead, according to real estate website Dirt, he recently purchased a $7.6 million mansion located in the Posh Riviera section of Pacific Palisades in California, just outside of Los Angeles. Also, I didn't realize that he has a sister named Nanachka Khan, who directed the film Always Be My Maybe, and also has written for shows including Fresh Off the Boat and Young Rock. Bought a Hollywood Hills mansion recently for $5 million. But what it comes down to, as we can kind of just take some time to go and rant about this here at the end of this hour, is ultimately we're seeing the direction of what's gone on so far. As we know, we talked about last week, and the last few weeks we've talked about some of the changes being made. We know the creative has been tough, and we really don't know what's been going on over there. But we also know that changes are dire to be made because the ratings on Raw are getting worse. Now, they're at a low that they can't get much lower from. 1.6 million viewers, that's it. And as for SmackDown, ratings are about 1.7, 1.8 million viewers at this point. That's where it's set out. Now, with all the things that were going on for the new summer tour coming out for WWE and their plans, this kind of just takes a big shot because with what's happening here, the company last week made their announcement they're going to be doing a touring schedule where they were going to start Friday, July 23rd as their first show, doing a live SmackDown from Cleveland, and then doing Raw the following Monday in Kansas City and a SmackDown in Minneapolis. And then we knew SummerSlam was going to be out on the road. Some other things, they were moving along and making some changes and getting a whole lot of shows out there. 25 city summer tour. So that was the plan. And that's all great news. But this now, more than anything else, besides what AEW was able to go and do, getting themselves moving forward, is where we are now, where the corporate behind the scenes of the restructuring process, the internal reviews, no surprise there. But it's fascinating on how quick Nick Khan has been able to go and get all this done. August 2020, he came in. He's not even been a year on the job. And that guy means business. He is working so fast and so quickly with everything that's going on. It's such a speed that I don't know how you do that in corporate, but he does. Because he's just not the corporate suit. He's just not your typical suit. This guy wants a lean, mean machine. That's what's happening. And if you're running a company like this, yeah, part of the thing you do is you do clean house. You do clean things up. You do shore up the bottom line. And that's what he's doing right now. Which all makes sense. But then the ultimate change is going to happen soon enough. Will have to be ultimately getting the product in line. You can do a whole lot with the product you have right now. All the documentaries, all the new original content. But the storyline, the day-to-day of the here and now That has to get fixed up. Now, they can make money off their legacy all they want. They've been doing that, and they can continue to do that. But that's not reflecting well to the broadcast deals they have with Fox and NBC Universal. Those deals are in place, but they have to do something. Now, in a way, they're not hurting too much. Because when you think about it, if I'm correct, I think that Fox and NBC Universal are still doing a revenue share on advertising. So there's money being made off of that. Ultimately, the shows are making money or are holding up their audience because of the fact that there's nothing else on cable TV that's going to draw the 18 to 49 audience like this show does, like on Raw. They're still doing their job there. Even though the bulk of the audience, which if it was a bigger audience from back in the day, it would be mostly an older audience, which now goes to streaming. And, you know, you can also justify the fact that some of the audience that would be watching wrestling might not be watching the live content, but they might be watching the network, or they might be a subscription holder. So you can think about that as well as part of the whole thing. For them to staying attached to watching the live product, you could justify that. You can also justify the fact that if the company is doing their social media work and they're getting the content out to people nevertheless, then people are still watching the content even though they're not watching it live in real time. So you can justify all of that. In a corporate sense, you can always justify and spin everything if you want. So I can understand that part. But is it good? No. It's not what we want to see. They need to go and make the changes so that the company overall, they have to have something more. They can't just go ahead and use the fact that if they need to go and do something for WrestleMania next year, they need to build to something to it, right? The audience, the fan base needs to be satisfied, satiated. But your core fan base, your internet wrestling community is all up at it. It's negative press, which is really, since after WrestleMania, they haven't not had a lot of good press. And I think part of the thing, I'm going to put this out there as well. Who's to say that right now, what we're seeing in terms of the product, we're not seeing anything overly special or creative or out there. It does, like the creative product does feel very generic. Don't you think? Remember, there's a reason we're getting the booking that we are right now of certain stars, and they're just rehashing and retooling over and over. It's never been this extreme before. But you're in the Thunderdome. You've been working in this kind of format now for a while. 15 months. The live shows, once those live shows come back, that's in what, 7 weeks? The company's not going to be able to, the fans will not tolerate all of this right here. What you got to think about. I mean, the fans are going to feel bad about certain stars that are getting let go because there's an affinity to them. They're going to have a likability to them. There's a fandom. So that's going to be right there. But as long as they get to be seen somewhere else, somewhere at the end of the year, all these wrestlers that have been let go and released this year, they're going to find their way somewhere else or doing something else with themselves outside of wrestling. And that's okay. I always think about the fact that these certain stars, they don't have to be in WWE. And certain fans are not going to say anything about that. But this is why I don't worry about only relying on WWE overall for wrestling, because they're not the end-all, be-all. We already know that other wrestlers can make money and they can make a career for themselves anywhere else. With this kind of advantage, I don't think, this is the other thing, the mentality of thinking like the Monday Night Wars, where we're going to see defections from certain stars that have been released going somewhere else. The other thing I have to consider is that why were the releases being allowed? Because if there was some of the stories that said that wrestlers asked for the release, that's another thing. If there's a bit of an issue where certain stars are being let go, that's one thing we always know. They can feature Endeavor any time. But when some are asking for releases, like on Andrade, for instance, we can always speculate, could there be somebody else that's going to feel like, all my friends are leaving here, this place isn't the way it was before. They could all go. What's also very fascinating, we have to put this correlation together as well. Among all the stars that we have here that were part of this environment, that were part of the roster that have been let go, we had several couples within this, remember? Andrade with Charlotte Flair, Aleister Black with Thea Trinidad, Lana with Rusev. Actual couples as a result of them meeting in WWE. Right? So you got to keep that in mind. That some of these people, they got their relationship started because of their time in the company. And there could be a thought process. I think that's one thing that nobody's looking at, is that Nick Khan, maybe the environment of like a morals clause of having talent being that attached to each other and also kind of working with each other to make sure that they're together. Same thing goes with the Sean Spears to the Peyton Royce. You could think about that too. Where John Moxley and Renee Young are no longer there. All those relationships that were fostered within the company. I found my wife, I found my husband working in WWE. Notice all those relationships are out. The only one we have left, it sounds like, well, Charlotte's still there because she's still going to be there. And Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. That's it. But that's an interesting correlation. I just thought about that right now. That it was all those couples, like the Olympic Village mentality that I've talked about before. That kind of happened here. And now that's gone. But I think there will be more changes. Something more to the internal end. The new changes probably to the international end, to the digital end. I think that's not finished. I predict there's going to be some more reshuffling and restructuring of those divisions. And I think there'll still be some other restructuring still ready to go coming up. Because even though the tour's coming back up, the Saudi Arabia deal, we're not getting any of that right now. No international touring right now. They're going to start putting on some extra money into the live events. Hopefully they work out well, because that's the extra expenses that are going to be put now on WWE to go and get this back on the road again. Who knows what kind of things they might have to work on in terms of preparations or any kind of measures they have to do with each arena for every show that they do, the going above and beyond to make sure everybody has a safe experience. They could go through that as well. We can say there's going to be a number of doors opening up for NXT stars that should be up on the way, but the pipeline to bring them up to the main roster, to make this is what I got to say too. Nick Khan is doing all the right things in the corporate end in terms of he wants to restructure, he wants to make everything lean, mean machine. Got it. But when it comes to talent relations, which he did make changes there too, to the Performance Center and how it's being run and operated, the talent procurement process, the talent development process, and the on-air product and the creative process intertwined. All of that has to be addressed next. But that's towards the end of this project. It's a multi-phase plan. So we're already seeing the first couple of phases right now, which is probably what he already had laid out back in August when he decided to go and take this job. After doing what was ultimately the locking in of his presidential tenure as President and Chief Revenue Officer of the company, it just makes sense to make the changes he's making in a revenue front as Chief Revenue Officer, understanding the books, understanding to make sure this company runs well into the future, the money coming in. He is locked in the future of this company. Because the other thing, too, is that if you're going to sell this company, if that was even true, the level of money that can be made for Vince McMahon and his family as a result is astronomical. Because this is a sports franchise. It's the level of an NFL, a Major League Baseball, a National Hockey League. This is multi-billion dollars. Okay, in the same way that Amazon just bought MGM Studios for $9.5 billion, WWE could probably offer themselves up for $10, $20 billion. Like, I don't know what the full valuation of the company is, but I could see them being sold. If they're going to do it, it's going to be tens of billions of dollars. It's not even a question there. But if you want to go ahead and make sure this whole company is run tip to tail efficiently, you have to shore up, which is ultimately the last part, which is the most attached Vince McMahon is. And the old style of booking wrestling in the WWE sense, after the changes, post Vince Russo. Okay, this has all got to change. What they've been doing now, living off of the trough, 20 years of really where they were in their last real heyday. They've been able to make it through over to this point, but now they have to think about what's coming up for the future, to take care of their broadcast partners, to take care of the future of this company, so that this company, to their shareholders and to their investors, are going to see there is a 5, 10, and 20-year plan in place, which is probably where Nick Khan is thinking about. He's thinking of a business plan to restructure, reformulate, and recreate this company and revolutionize this company based on what he's done at CAA. Make this company ultimately great for Hollywood, great for media, great for sports overall, making this multi-purpose company a juggernaut. There's a vision here that we're not privy to, but I want to see it played through. Because if this all works out and Nick Khan's able to accomplish what he wants to do, and it works, where I believe the final phase is if he could go and shore up the actual programming part, the current programming right now of the company and the storylines of what it is, if he can get that fixed, ultimately it's going to happen at some point. I think that actually happens before the end of the year. If he gets there and he does it, the future is bright for professional wrestling, period. And companies like AEW that have benefited from the success of what WWE does is going to work for all these wrestling promotions coming up for the good of professional wrestling. I want to stay cautiously optimistic that Nick Khan and the changes he's making are going to ultimately bring this company another boom period of success. We'll leave it there. Come back next week with another Wrestling Zero podcast. Thanks for listening in. If you have comments, any questions, anything like that, you want to make any commentary, please, on the YouTube video, drop your comments in there. If you're listening to the program, email me, kingofpodcast@yahoo.com, or hit me up on any of the social media places, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I'm all there, at King of Podcasts. Come back for another Wrestling Zero podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.